guys, and welcome to this video. So I'm Lawrence and I teach guitar, so if anyone wants any jazz or fusion guitar lessons, please contact me through the links in the description. But today we're looking at the track Maiden Voyage, which comes from the Herbie Hancock album, also named Maiden Voyage. Absolutely beautiful album, so if any of you haven't checked it out, definitely check it out. Absolutely wonderful piece of work by Herbie there. So let's go through it. So the piece starts on D sus chord. We play 4 bars of D sus, then it goes to an F sus, and we repeat that back to D, and then F sus. So just 4 bars of each chord. Then we go down to E flat sus for another 4 bars, and then the next chord is a little bit contentious. So in the original, there's a minor third in this chord, so it's like a minor sus chord, and you definitely hear them outlining the minor third within their soloing. But due to the real book misnaming this chord as a D flat sus chord, then it's usually played as a D flat sus nowadays, and that's the way it was treated in the backing track I was playing over at the start of the video. So for today's lesson, then I'm going to be treating it as a D flat sus, but be aware that in the original it's more like a D flat minor suspended chord. So, and then we go back to our D sus, back to our F sus, and then the chord progression repeats itself. So that's all that's going on really. So how do we treat each chord? What kind of scales are we going to be playing over before we talk about flowing through the progression? Well, it's totally up to you how you see these chords. Obviously, they're all going to be sus chords, so they're all going to be treated the same. So for our D sus chord, many people will want to treat it as a Mixolydian sound from D. And that's a great way of seeing it, if that's a good way for you. We could also see it as a G major 7 chord, which G major would work over our D sus, because obviously the Mixolydian is the 5th mode of G major, so... But the way that I like to view it is as a Dorian sound. So this is the way that guys like Allan Holdsworth or Pat Martino, they always viewed things from the relative Dorian. And for me, I built up lots and lots of Dorian language, and many of you will have, if you'd started as a rock guitarist, much of your language will be based around the Dorian scale. So I like applying all this language that I've built up to different contexts. So I see everything in relation to a Dorian. And then I get to use all this vocabulary. So then obviously the chord progression moves up to F, and then you can treat F in exactly the same way as you did in D sus. You can either see it as Mixolydian, B flat major in this case, or C Dorian. So I'll always be seeing it as the Dorian version. And then down to E flat, in which case I'm going to be treating it as a B flat Dorian. In the backing track, it went to D flat sus, so I was treating it as an A flat Dorian. But obviously, if you're playing over the original changes, then you'll just treat it as a D flat Dorian. So that's the foundational way that I play over it. Obviously, there are other colours we can add in. So for the D sus chord, instead of treating it as an A Dorian, we could treat it as an A melodic minor, and that would give us a kind of Lydian dominant sound. And any theory buffs in the comments, I know they'll be like, oh, well, you can't use that because the sus chord's got a 4 in it, and the Lydian dominant's got the sharp 4 in it. But I just see these as tension colours. So if you don't like the sound of it, then that's fine, you don't have to use it. But these are the kind of sounds that I will use at certain points of the solo if I feel I want to add a little bit more tension. So our A flat melodic minor over our D sus chord gives us this kind of sound. Gives us this kind of sound, and for me that's a good option over the chord. So Another option, you could use our half-whole diminished scale. And that resolves nicely to the sus chord as well. So although I wouldn't base my solo around these chords, and I would always use the foundation from the Dorian scale, then sometimes these extra colours can be nice to add a little bit of tension within your solos. So essentially that's all I'm doing, pretty much just moving around Dorian scales around the neck. So then we want to think about how we can flow between these chords. So a common thing I hear from players who are maybe less experienced at jazz is they'll see the chart and it'll say, oh, you need to play 4 bars of D sus and then 4 bars of F sus. And that's exactly what they do. They'll play 4 bars of the chord, and then on the bar line, every single time, they'll change the chord tones as instructed by the chart. But this leaves your phrasing sounding very block-like and a little bit rigid, and it doesn't flow very well. Essentially, you want your ear to tell you when the chord tones change. So a lot of the time, say we've got 4 bars of D sus, I'll play 3 bars of D sus, and then on the 4th bar, I'll move my ideas to play over F sus. And this kind of prepares the movement to the next chord. I won't do this all the time. Sometimes I'll change the chord on the bar line as instructed. Sometimes I'll even delay the resolution. But the most important thing is that your ear tells you when to change the chord tones, not the chart. So how can we practice this? I think a simple way of practicing this would be forcing ourselves to change the scale prematurely before the chord. So I'm going to start by playing a phrase in A minor Dorian over our D sus, and then a bar before the chord changes, so on bar 4 of the progression, I'm going to prematurely move to the C Dorian to play over the F chord, okay? So I'll demonstrate that. Okay, so a bar before each chord moved, I'd already moved my scale to the next chord. And if you do this all the time, again, it starts sounding very predictable and your phrasing will start sounding a little bit square. However, if you vary when you change the scale within the phrase, then this will give your solo more freedom and it'll start flowing through the changes more. So the most important thing is that you listen to your ear when you want the scale to change, rather than just following the chord chart, because the chord chart is just supposed to give you kind of directions. It's not supposed to be the be-all and end-all. Maybe sometimes I'll change my scale a bar before the chord moves. Sometimes I'll change it on the bar line. As I said before, sometimes you can delay the resolution of the line. And I think a common example of this is when you're playing over a 5-1 progression with an altered scale. A lot of times soloists will hold the altered tension after the chord resolves, and this can be a nice way to create outside sounds. Whereas in this more modal progression, it's less likely that you'll delay the resolution. However, it could be done. Say you were playing some chromatic sequence, and you wanted to wait for the line to resolve. You could do this through the changes. But these are all just things to experiment around with and try and kind of get more freedom and fluency through the changes. And the more you experiment round with these ideas, the greater flow you'll get. So I'll link the backing track to this that I used in the description box below. I think it's a nice backing track. As I said, they don't use the original changes on that D-flat chord, but I still think it's got a nice vibe to the backing track, and I think it captures the character of the song. So I did like the backing track. But anyway, guys, obviously my solo will be transcribed from the start of the video, and I'll also transcribe some of the ideas that I played in this video for my Patreon members, so please check me out over there. There are many lesson videos over there with lots and lots of things, from chord melody arrangements to lots of solos, lots of exercises, and more in-depth videos from my books, which you can also check out through my website. So there was a lot of pentatonics going on in here. I suppose that's the last thing I can mention. Over the D sus chord, obviously you've got our A minor pentatonic, we've got our B minor pentatonic, and our E minor pentatonic that we can all draw on through these changes. However, my foundation would be the A minor pentatonic. So there was a lot of pentatonic stuff that I was playing in this video. So that's all in my pentatonic book, and any stuff like the melodic minor scale will be found in Outside Secrets. But thanks for watching anyway though, guys, and I'll be back very shortly for another video.